I didn't record the first 10 kills, but here we're starting on the 11th. So for Awakened Vardy, this is the gear setup that I used in the inventory. I used the Ring of Recoil, or sorry, the Ring of Suffering with the recoil enabled because I tried a bunch with the Berserker Ring, but as soon as I put on the Ring of Suffering, I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but I got 10% further in the fight, which really helped me get experience with the sub 50 when the double orbs come out. So I would recommend trying the Suffering if you haven't tried it and you're struggling. But if that being said, like if you're a Flick God and you have like a Bellator ring or an Altar ring or even I guess like a Berserker ring, then you could use that if you're never gonna miss a flick and you're never gonna get hit off prayer. I like it for the chip damage. Your recoil works with the chip damage, so it's just like an extra thrall. And so how you're gonna pre-put, you want to make sure that you take the Menophyte Remedy before your Divine Super Combat. So you just do that. The Divine Super Combat actually helps a lot. And then this is your inventory, all said and done. That's what it's going to look like if you want to copy the same one that I did. Okay, now that I've covered gear setup, also by the way, in your rune pouch you want Thrall runes, not Vengeance runes like I had in the last clip. That's just because I was CMing. And you also want your Fang on Slash. Forgot to mention that. But so this inventory that I have here is what I use to practice. So you just go into your normal Vardorvis, you get the boss below 25% health. I got it to about 50 health because your max hit with this gear, well, I had a Berserker ring when I was practicing, but your max hit was like 48. Maybe it's like 49 in this gear. Anyways, you just get it to like 50, 60 health. And then what I would do is I would keep my Thrall summoned and I would kick it every now and again, and that because Vardorvis heals throughout the fight. So you just try to keep his health around like 50, 60 health. And then also at the same time as doing that, it's gonna shoot out the range orb every time in a normal Vardorvis. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna practice flicking to magic and then back to melee, and you'll know that you have it the right timing if you hear the slap and then you swap to mage and then you get back to melee before it hits you. Like if you get hit off prayer, then you know that you're going too slow, and you know that if you swap too quickly, you'll get hit by the orb. So it's really just, it's about the timing, and then it's really not that different when you get to Awaken Vardorvis if it does magic first, because you know it's just going to be the opposite one next. Like it's either range magic or magic range, and then it's always back to melee. So it's really not that different. So that's one good way to practice. But yeah, you just sit in there, you just dance around him, keep his health at that like 50, 60 HP, and you just last as long as your food will make it. I would say if you're doing double flicking, then if you make it like, I don't know, 8 minutes with this inventory, that's a pretty good run. You should, if you really want to practice, then shoot for lasting for like a 10-minute long fight, and then as soon as you're out of your food, you just double Void Waker spec and it should die instantly if you keep it 50, 60 health, and then you can see how long you lasted in the fight. Okay, now that we have gear and practice covered, I'll just give you guys the general tips that I was focused on when I was fighting this thing. Above 50% is pretty standard. It's just like the normal Vardorvis. Only difference is sometimes you have to pray mage instead of range. And then sub 50% is when it starts to get challenging with the double heads popping up. So I'll show you this example, and then I'll try to explain what I think to myself. So right here, the head pops up. They're going to pop up at different times as when the axes are moving. So this is like what I would consider like an easy head pop up where I can do both of my flicks and go back to melee before the next axe pops up. So there's going to be some times where you can only pray against one orb and then move, and then while you're moving, pray against the other orb, and then back to melee when you're on that tile, like when you're on the tile that you move to. And there's going to be some times when you have to pray against two orbs, then move, and then as you're moving, switch to melee. And there's just different scenarios depending on when Vardorvis's heads pop up when the axes are out. So I'll go find an example of when a head pops up when you have to use one prayer and then move and then pray as you're moving and then back to melee as you're on the tile. I'll try to find an example of that to show you. Okay, so I found an example of a different like type of Vardorvis head pop-up. So as soon as I'm done this reCAPTCHA, I think it's gonna pop up yeah, it pops up at the same time as the axis. So if you wanna like start to like notice stuff like that same time as the axis, you have to pray once, move, pray range, and then back to melee as you're on that tile. You see what I'm saying now? And so I'll find an example of where you have to pray twice and then move and show you guys. So this is an example of having to pray twice and then move, but it's also where you have to move before you have to pray. So again, it's just right after this reCAPTCHA. So the axes popped up, and then a tick later, the head pops up. So I had to move first, then you do double pray flick, and then move, and then back to melee as you move. I did miss the melee flick, but if I would have prayed melee there, then that would have been correct as I was moving. Not when I get to that tile, as I'm moving, I have to pray melee. So I hope that I was able to show you that there's like different scenarios of like having to pray twice and then move and then flick melee, or pray once, move, flick, and then pray melee. I hope I showed you that there's multiple scenarios of that. But the last thing that I would focus on and that I used was if you do miss a flick sub 25%, like you miss your orb, like either of the orbs, don't bother trying to pray melee because you don't actually have time. Like your prayer will be disabled still. So what you do is always, number one, focus on moving. And then if you miss a pray flick, then focus on the next pray flick. And then get your melee prayer back up. And if you do miss a flick, not only do you have to focus on hitting the next flick, but you have to somehow double eat in between because it'll hit you like a 40 or a 50. most likely. You might get lucky and get hit like a 13, but most of the time you're gonna get hit a 50. So you have to double flick the next set of orbs, double eat, and get your melee up before it happens. And all the time, focus on moving. Moving is number one. Those axes can hit 90s, so you have to be moving. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to talk about here is the settings that I used for killing Vardorvis. So you're going to want to go to your plugin hub, get better NPC highlights, it's called. It's this one here, better NPC highlight by Bucus. So you're going to want to install that, and then you go to your settings, search up better NPC highlights. And then under True Tile, you're going to want to check this, and then you're going to want 12-225, 12-227. Those are the axes for Vardorvis. And then also what I used was hull, so you're going to want to check hull, and then 12-226 for the ID. That is Vardorvis's head, so the thing that pops up and shoots out the orbs. As well as this plugin, I used, it's called Vardorvis Projectiles Inferno Stats. Get that one. And then search up Vardorvis Projectiles, make sure that it's on. And then I used the Chambers of Xerix projectile style. That's how I got the green and blue orbs instead of the cones and stuff. So those are the settings that I used. I did also play around if you want to totally make it so that there's no pillars in the room. I think it personally made it harder because you can't see the spikes on the ground when they come up. But as you can see in my video, like I did do a lot of tries doing it that way. I do think it was harder. The way that I did that, it's called Blindfold, plugin Blindfold, and these are the settings that I used with it. So if you want to try that, that's up to you. I do think that it made it harder for me, and I do think it was easier once I could actually see the spikes on the ground. But those are the settings that I used, so use whatever you want from those.